Hi. Welcome again. Here we are, day 2 of summer workshops. Everything go good? I'm not going to, no waves. I'm not going to do any waves. How do everything, you can wave. Hi. I try to, my team, they're like, that is so corny, don't do that. But people like it. People like it. Or maybe you're just humoring me. Anyway, I'm not even going to, hi. Hope everybody have a good second day. That's the spirit. Well, it's about to get better because we have a great lineup this evening for our second faculty event. We are really happy to welcome writer Asako Serizawa to the stage and also printmaker Vicky Tomayko. And before we start, though, and then afterwards we'll do a Q&A, just like we did last night. Before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. Bathrooms are still down the hall. Asako will be signing books at the back after the faculty talk, and her books are also for sale at the back. Vicky has some really beautiful, cool little objects at the back that are for sale, so I encourage you to check them out. They're really cool, great. And there's, don't forget our great new merchandise. That's fabulous. And we also have stickers. Did I mention stickers last night? I actually heard somebody gasp. Who gasped over here? I heard a gasp. There are stickers back there, run, don't walk. But don't run, walk. I won't do that one again, I'm sorry. T-shirts and stickers, I have it highlighted. T-shirts and stickers. Hudson Walker Gallery is open now and after the event. If you haven't checked out the new exhibition that we just put up last week, please do. It's really wonderful. And that's it. Turn off your cell phones. I'm just going to keep this short because you were here yesterday. Was anybody not here yesterday? Should I say all the things? You can guess. You could probably guess all of the things that I would have said. You feel excellent. And come talk to me afterwards if you want to. Okay, so I'm going to invite, it is my pleasure to invite one of Asako's students, Myra Slotnick, to the stage to introduce Asako. Come on up.
Thank you. I wrote this down so I don't mess it up. I am thrilled and honored to introduce Asako Serizawa tonight. Last year around this time, I had the privilege of attending her workshop in historical fiction, and I was about 3/4 of the way through a book I was working on, secretly not entirely believing I had the stuff that it took to accomplish it, to accomplish the thing, the thing that writers reach for. It felt enormous. The book is about the AIDS crisis in Provincetown in the 80s and our community's response to it. Also, I had lost my own only brother to AIDS, but his story, my story, was not in the book. I wasn't telling that story. I had told that story my whole life as a playwright. And there was Asako each day of the workshop in her deep, elegant, reverential way, cheerfully prodding us, mining us for gold, scribbling illegible notes on the pages of our work in the margins. And then at the end of the week, Asako offered to sit with each of us in private if there was anything we needed to ask or say. And she reached over the table right out there, and she took both my hands in hers and said, "I know you can write this book. I know you can do it." And I got home and pulled out her copy of my work, the one with the notes scribbled in the margins. I had saved her notes for last, and at the very end, in pristine handwriting, she wrote, "Thank you for bearing witness. Thank you for telling the story of our beloved Provincetown," for she was a former FAWC fellow. And then she said, "And thank you for telling your story." Damn. And tell my story I did. And tell my brother's story I did, woven in the fabric of the story of the town. And when I recently finished a first draft of the book, the very first person I wanted to tell was Asako Serizawa, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Asako Serizawa is the author of Inheritors, which won the Penn Open Book Award and the Story Prize Spotlight Award, a recipient of grants from the National Endowments for the Arts and the Mass Cultural Council. Her work has been awarded 2 O. Henry Prizes, a Pushcart Prize, a Rona Jaffe Foundation Writers Award, and fellowships from the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown, MacDowell, and the Civitella Ranieri Foundation, and the Foundation John Mikulski, among others. Please welcome Asako Serizawa.
Well, thank you for being here. I know it's raining a little bit. And thank you, Myra, again, for that introduction. And now I have to read. I really wanted to read something new. Unfortunately, I'm still in the process of researching, which is the part that takes the longest for me. And so I am going to read something else. I'm doing this generative workshop that's about archives, and today we looked at objects and weaving in objects and what we can do with them. And so I thought I would read a piece that I typically never read in public, but it has all these objects, and the objects kind of do the work for the story. So I thought I would read this, but for time's sake, I had to shave off a whole layer, and so we'll see how this reads. So I guess in a way, it's kind of new. Okay, it's called The Visitor. He came around noon, this man, this soldier who called himself Murayama. At first I thought he'd come, like so many after the war, to beg for food or inquire after the whereabouts of someone I may or may not have heard of. But this soldier, this Murayama, had come clutching a piece of paper, looking for a son Yasushi. It takes place at the end of World War II during the American occupation of Japan. I just thought I'd say that. I did not trust him, as my eyes wandered from the scrap of paper he'd apparently followed here to the gaunt face lowered in a deferential manner. I listened to his patter and did not immediately question him, his presence like a beaten dog's, wary and shamefaced, his whole shrunken person so darkened by what I assumed was the tropical sun that he appeared like a photograph negative backlit against the bright street. Instead, I told him that Yasushi hadn't returned from the war, and though Murayama's eyes flashed at this news, he never attempted to peer past the wooden gate I'd opened just wider than a crack, despite my husband's caution each morning. And after a moment, I found myself leading him into the front room, excusing myself to rummage for tea leaves and millet noodles, which was all I could offer. Whatever this man had to tell me about our son, I wanted to know, or so I told myself. I did not recognize my own accreted privation. The paper was brown, shiny with wear, and I resisted looking at it as I poured the tea, embarrassingly weak, and urged the noodles taken from my evening portion. In this room, softly lit by the midday sun sifting through the osmanthus tree, rustling outside the sliding glass doors, he seemed less shrunken than coiled, his muscles humming discordantly. Calculating the hours before my husband's return in the evening, I shifted my focus to drawing Murayama out. In retrospect, I can only say that it was a mother's instinct at work. By then, I had already made up my mind to guard this secret visit by this soldier. Murayama did not speak right away. Instead, he gazed around the room, bare now except for the pale, ornamental vase my husband had sent from Harbin during his tenure there. Like everything else, I did not expect the vase to stay, its delicate color soon to be given up for a sack of grains or a few stalk of vegetables. But for the moment, it cheered the room, its quiet shape attracting the eye and settling the soul, though it did not seem to have this effect on Murayama. I got up and slid the glass doors open. The air outside was still, the sky abuzz with cicadas clamoring as though to convince everyone it was summer, a hot one, only to be appeased by kites and watermelons, both of which had been missing from the season for some time. Even now, a year since surrender, It was the stream of returning soldiers and refugees that had increased, bringing new hopes and difficult tidings to those in perpetual waiting. Though I too had not given up, I knew that in our case, even if Yasushi had survived, he could choose not to return to this house he'd once found so intolerable as to run away. I sat back down, and glancing at the creased paper placed at the edge of the low lacquered table, again urged the tea and noodles towards him. To my surprise, I met his gaze. This man, this soldier, knew Yasushi. The knowledge, like a sudden clap, shifted the curtain of air between us, and for a moment I could feel my son's presence, his shape, his face, until Murayama bowed, picked up his chopsticks, and began to eat, chewing the noodles, sipping the broth, his movements measured as though heeding the advice of someone who'd once told him to slow down, eat with care, and he confessed as much, explaining that his mother had demanded it. The last time he'd eaten properly was 2 days ago, when he discovered that his home, indeed most of Nagoya, had been razed by the firebombs. "Did you find your family?" I asked, blotting my face with the handkerchief. Murayama looked away. He searched for them in the shanties that had cropped up in the ruins, but nobody had seen or heard from them. That's when I decided to make my round. Shizuoka was the closest, so I came here. I'm surprised I found you. Seems like this city too went the way of Nagoya. He glanced about appraisingly this time, taking in the vase, the wall, the view of the narrow garden. The house, barely standing, suddenly felt indecently opulent. I dabbed my face again. "Yasushi would have been glad to see you," I said. And again I caught that flash in his eyes. "Did you know each other long?" Murayama explained that started out in different units. As we lost more people, units got merged. I was stationed in Luzon when I met Tanaka. That's what your son called himself, Tanaka Jiro. You might have been aware? Tanaka Jiro. It was a name I recognized. It belonged to the Kempeitai officer who'd once come to this house to interrogate my husband about his anti-patriotic views, an unimaginative accusation the government launched at whomever, even a respected doctor like my husband. That Yasushi would take this name. He and my husband had had their differences, but this was a shock. "Murayama-san, please excuse me. We had no idea about Yasushi's whereabouts. We'd assumed he'd enlisted, but we found no trace of him. Now I know why. Did he talk much about himself?" Murayama, listening keenly, explained that he and Tanaka had only spent 3 months together when they were both in Luzon. "I was supposed to be deployed with him, but I got pulled from my unit because of my mechanical skills. And you were kept back," I said. "When I knew I was staying behind, I offered to, take care of everyone's effects if it came to it," he said. Tanaka said he'd left no one back home, but the next day, after they were gone, I found that, he gestured at the paper. There was no doubt Yasushi had severed himself from us, but a new fear unfurled in my chest. "What kind of mission was this?" I asked. "When was it?" Murayama shifted in his seat. 2 years ago. It was the garrison in Ireland, but given the state of the war. But there must have been news. Murayama lowered his gaze. "Last I know, we lost contact. But that means nothing. Strange things happen," he added. No doubt this was true. It was the source of every painful hope. But I began to shake. "Listen," he set down his chopsticks. "No one knows for sure. That's the truth. People turn up all the time," he said bitterly, probably alluding to all the soldiers who'd returned only to find their names etched into tombstones in the family plot. Outside, the leaves of osmanthus trees were shimmering like coins, the cicadas chorusing to an emulous screech. I glanced at the vase. Its demure fecund shape, once so expectant, now looked hollowed. "May I?" Apologizing, Murayama handed me the paper. The paper was softer than I had expected, the worn folds releasing a leathery smell, and I saw at once that it was my son's handwriting, his gruff script still slouching to the left despite his early determination to correct it. This evidence, along with the other, the 2 names he'd written, the one we'd given him relegated beneath the hideous one, Tanaka Jiro, pierced my chest, hurt and grief cresting before breaking into gratitude for this scrap of Yasushi that had made it back. I opened my mouth to thank Murayama for the care he'd taken, but a strange expression traversed his face, an odd detachment, as though he'd been noting the moment, a lone woman in slow undress, and my stomach clutched. He was a soldier, I reminded myself, the shadowy rumors that had been circulating suddenly close to my ear. What did it matter that he was polite, that he had known Yasushi, that he was a son? I glanced at his hands, toughened by mechanical work, and who knew what else? At his blunt fingers fingered the teacup. I found myself shifting towards the vase, although I knew I would be no match for a soldier, even a starving one like this. Murayama did not notice my alarm. Again, apologizing for his presence, he thanked me for my hospitality and repeated that he'd only come here hoping against the odds that Tanaka had made it back. I didn't know where else to go. Us soldiers were pretty unpopular these days. I did not reply. I stood and slid the glass doors wider. Outside, the day had mellowed, a light breeze loosening the air, the cool shadow cast by the eaves beginning to elongate on the ground, evoking the shape of the awning we did not have but had always wanted. That evening, when Yasushi failed to come home, the cicadas had been relentless just like this, and the pang of that memory cut through me. I returned to my seat. People are just tired. You mustn't let them bother you. This time, it was Murayama who didn't reply. Instead, he swirled the teacup, watching the dregs rise to the rim, and I noticed that a sheen had come to his forehead. Why was he here? The question, only a seed in the back of my mind, effervesced, and a feathery terror fluttered across my back. Had he known Yasushi wouldn't be here? I repeated, you really mustn't take these things personally. People are frightened. Everyone knows you had orders to follow. Murayama had apparently heard me the first time. He brusquely told me that he appreciated my sympathy, but he was tired of people, so-called civilians, rolling out the carpet when there were things to cheer about, only to whip it away when the going got tough. What makes you think you have the right? It was our lives you risked. Well, if we had known, if we'd been informed, then what, he said. What would you have done? Well, someone would have put a stop to it. Like who, the emperor? He laughed. No one wanted to know, and now you just want us hanged. That's unfair. Nobody faults you for following orders, I said. Orders? Murayama looked at me. Please, I glanced at his hands again, grubby with dirt brought back from Luzon and wherever else. In a few months, we'll all see things more clearly. Would you like more tea? I moved to comply, even though I knew there was none left. Murayama slapped his palm on the table. I know what people are saying, all the things we supposedly did. What I want to know is, do you believe it? Do you believe your son? I seized the neck of my blouse. What? I asked. Murayama licked his lip, then his face slackened. Forget it. Tanaka was a stellar guy, a model soldier. I picked up the paper and again examined Yasushi's script. Of course, I hadn't been immune to the whispers, the hushed anecdotes, the grisly suggestions, and the details, powerful in their obscurity, had collected like secret pearls in the back of my mind. Was this why Murayama had come? To confess? To be absolved? Please, what were you saying about Yasushi? Murayama's face furrowed, dubious, but full of desire. Glancing at the vase, the green color almost blue where the sun had drawn its shade, he reassured me that Tanaka had been well loved by everybody. Sure, we heard the stories too, starving soldiers eating each other and all that. But those guys were in remote places. I mean, Tanaka wasn't on an island, but his island had villages. I mean, sure, he would have had to secure his position, but the point is, he laughed nervously. Would you like to see my album? It took a moment for my mind to catch up. Of course, the regimental album. I had been shown these while visiting bereaved neighbors, but never imagined seeing my sons. Murayama's face dotted with sweat despite the breeze that had begun to visit the room, and I could smell his body a seeping acridity. I gripped my handkerchief. Yes, I wanted to see the album. Murayama reached for his satchel, explaining that Yasushi, originally from a different regiment, was not actually in his album. He assured me that military life was similar everywhere. See this? He pointed at the first photograph. That's me. Little more than a schoolboy, his face, like the others, was knitted against uncertainty, his ardent resolve betraying only his belief in who he still believed he was. That guy there, my first bunkmate. Page after page, he picked out key figures rattling off facts about his division, the battalion, platoons, and squads comprising it, his voice rising as the photographs showed fewer rows of soldiers, their individual faces becoming clearer, the background changing to show fields, runways, harbors. Coming to a portrait of his own unit, he told fond anecdotes about camp life, how training meant to harden them only made them feel more exposed, their reflexes always plotting against the speed of bullets. At some point, you realize they're just trying to beat the fear out of you. He recalled each slap, each punch, how the humiliation pumped him up. Most days, we wanted to kill each other or kill them, he jabbed at a photograph of decorated officers. And again, the feeling of Yasushi's proximity seized me. I had lived with a notion of Yasushi as a grown man, but without any context, he had defied imagination. Now I was glimpsing his world, the details of his surroundings, supplying a hint of his voice, his life, and the experience was so beguiling I found myself giving over to this reunion with my son. At 5 o'clock, my husband's Gustav Becker chimed its sonorous report, startling us. Seizing the moment to comment on the yellowing sky, I noted the quickening traffic foretelling my husband's return. To my relief, Murayama flipped to the album's last pages, where he had pasted his own snapshots. Singapore, Malaya, Philippines. He identified all his friends, explaining that Yasushi would have appeared in them had anyone been able to coax the camera from him. He loved that thing, thought he could be a photojournalist. These were his favorites. The images were sentimental. An ant on a cigarette butt, a fish in a puddle held by an empty crab shell, but that captured what his eyes had seen and moved him to record. I swallowed the lump that had come to my throat and touched the album. Murayama all but leapt up. He slammed the album shut, his gaze darting from my hand to the wall, settling on the vase, the pale shape now burnished by the afternoon sun, and again I saw that peculiar look, cool and assessing, but almost guilty now, and it struck me that he had come for something. I quickly apologized, telling him that his visit had been a gift, one for which I wished I had something to offer. It's paltry, but would you like to take some of Yasushi's clothes? Murayama blinked, then his face creased. Muttering an embarrassed apology, he stuffed his album into his satchel and thanked me again for my hospitality. You never know, he told me, putting on his gaiters, his rising voice rattling the house. Tanaka was famous for pulling things off. In fact, when he did show up, would I mind letting him know that he, Murayama, had looked him up? I unlatched the gate and asked if there wasn't anything more I could do. Telling him he'd already inconvenienced me sufficiently, he bowed deeply and stepped away, turning once before dissolving into the evening crowd. Returning to the room, I gathered the chopsticks, wiped the table, gently slipped the worn paper into my pocket. Latching the sliding glass doors, I vigorously tested the lock. On my way out, I stopped to wipe the vase. There in the depth of its room was a photograph. I picked it out. In the foreground was Murayama, his open smile, revealing a sunny boy, not yet browned by the tropical sun. A field spread out behind him, a few shrubs in the distance, the open meadow bisected by a diagonal line, a newly dug trench. Along the trench was a line of people, roughly clothed and blindfolded, their legs folded under them, their ankles and wrists bound by ropes tied to stakes hammered deep into the earth. Though diminished by distance, their faces were crisp, the ends of their blindfolds flapping around mouths contorted by the anticipation of the soldiers, standing several meters behind them, bayonets unsheathed. Like the prisoners, the soldiers' faces were also diminished but crisped. And as my eyes darted from the ferocious faces of these boys gripping their bayonets to the runny faces of the prisoners twisted in desperation, I realized their expressions were in fact identical, both parties bound by the same fear, the attackers anticipating the same moment of piercing anticipated by the victims. And it was then that I registered that the line of shrubs were not at all shrubs, but a row of chairs fattened by decorated officers observing the performance. Two questions sprung to mind. Why had Murayama hidden this picture here? And was this Yasushi's photograph? Then it dawned on me that perhaps this whole visit had been a ploy, plotted perhaps by Yasushi, to not only leak the incriminating image, for wasn't that what photojournalists did, but also signal to me that he, though uninterested in presenting himself, had in fact survived. This last thought seized my imagination, and the more I thought about it, the more it seemed plausible. Hadn't Murayama tried to prepare me for Yasoshi's return? I brought the photograph closer. Yes, those were indeed officers, and that a row of training soldiers. One end eclipsed by Murayama's head, the other end cut off by the photograph's border, the last visible soldier a mere slice, one visible leg stepping forward, one visible arm raising the bayonet, the sliver of his face sending a bolt of shock through me. Yasoshi. Outside, the sky had cooled to a pleasant cobalt, the clacking footsteps of the passerbys beginning to thin. One pair stopped outside my gate, my husband. I gripped the photograph, glancing about the room, my gaze, like Murayama's, alighted on the vase. I dropped the photograph inside and let my buckling knees fold me to the floor. Outside, the gate rattled, the rusty bolt catching as usual. Smoothing my skirt, I arranged myself, tugging my blouse, straightening my back, as the momentary quiet of the room, once again assailed by the cicadas, was swallowed up by the darkening summer sky. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I was going to say some things, but I'll say it after at the Q&A. Is that good?
Okay. Asako Serizawa, everyone, some more applause, please. Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you to Myra for that wonderful introduction as well. There you are. There you are. Wonderful. Next, we're going to hear from Vicky Tomayko. And to introduce Vicky, I'm pleased to invite up one of Vicky's students, as well as being a beloved faculty member here at the Fine Arts Work Center, Andrea Lawler. Come on up.
Thank you, David. It's so exciting to be here as a student. I don't think I can get enough of it. I have had the great pleasure of learning from Vicky these last few days, and I think her pedagogy is a revelation of generosity, humility, good humor, and this elegant confidence, not unlike her own prints. I read in a recent interview something I think might be classic Vicky. She said, I have this rule to always leave some space that's not printed on. I want to keep the integrity of the paper. I want people to know it's just a sheet of paper. It's a beautiful sheet of paper, but it's just paper. And I read that and I thought, this is what is happening. In that same piece, they describe Tomayko's works as dimensional and complicated with empty spaces that allow her creatures to wander. And that strikes me as such an apt description of Vicky's relationship to both the natural world in her work and also to teaching. She allows us creatures room to wander. She showed us so many pieces of her own that, this one piece she showed us, she's been drawing, she broke her wrist. I'm going to just tell this story that you told us. She broke her wrist and then has been learning to draw with her non-dominant hand. And that was so freeing for me as somebody totally new to taking a visual arts class like this, to see this work, and it was so delightful and so in keeping with this other work with all the creatures. And I felt like there's room to wander, there's room to make mistakes, and then there's just room to appreciate the paper as paper. And I am so grateful to be in Vicky's workshop. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her if you don't know. Vicky Tomayko is an artist, printmaker, and teacher who lives and works in Truro, Massachusetts. Tomayko teaches at Cape Cod Community College, Provincetown Art Association and Museum, and here at the Fine Arts Work Center, where she also manages the print studio. Tomayko was a fellow here at the Fine Arts Work Center in 1985 and was the assistant professor of printmaking at Connecticut College from 1979 through 81, has taught at the Mass College of Art Low Residency Master's Program. From 2009 to 2014, she was artist in residence at the Cape Cod Lighthouse Charter School in Orleans for 10 years. And Tomayko received an MFA in printmaking from Western Michigan University, has been the recipient of 2 Ford Foundation grants, and is represented by Schoolhouse Gallery in Provincetown for the last 2 decades. Vicky's work has been included in exhibitions in New York, Boston, Miami, Los Angeles, Venice, Istanbul, Basel, and Melbourne. And we are so lucky to learn from her and absorb her work and count her as a long-term member of this beautiful community. Please join us in welcoming Vicky to the stage.
Thank you. It's really great to be able to teach here at the Fine Arts Work Center so many years in a row. And actually managing the print shop here is, it's like my favorite job in the world. So I'm quite pleased to be here. So I want to show you, I don't know what. I want to show you some new work. But first I want to talk a little bit about this class that I'm going to be teaching at the end of July with artist Sarah Stern. So Sarah is a former fellow here at the Fine Arts Work Center. She was a fellow in 2018, and then a returning fellow as a PACE fellow in 2022. And Sarah and I got to know each other in the print shop, so we've worked together in the print shop, and we've also been working together musically. So it's been a really nice relationship, and Sarah suggested that maybe we should teach an experimental class together. So we came up with this crazy idea, which I'm going to tell you about. But first I want to tell you a little bit about Sarah. So this is a still from one of a video animation that Sarah made here in Provincetown, out in the dunes, called Disco Ball. And Sarah Stern is definitely an interdisciplinary artist. She lives in New York City. Her recent projects combine varied histories of landscapes, urban development, and speculative fiction. She works between and across multimedia performance, moving image installation, sculpture, architectural intervention, printmaking, and animation. Sarah Stern has exhibited and screened her work in the U.S. and internationally at venues including the Sculpture Center, Anthology Film Archives, the Jewish Museum, the Institute of Contemporary Arts in Singapore, and the Fine Arts Work Center. So this is a still photograph taken of a performance that Sarah Stern did when she was a PACE Fellow here. Out in the dunes. And one of the things that she did, which was so magical, was to have white horses enter the space. And she projected her animation on the side of the horses. It was so, what a magical evening that was. And here's another still image of the performance that evening where she was projecting on the sand and the horse. So I just want to tell you a little bit about the course because I'm super excited to be teaching this, and I don't know exactly how it's going to go. Very experimental. So we're calling it the Printed Gesture, and we're thinking that this will engage the print shop as a performative space and not just an art-making space. So participants are not required to have any experience in either performance or printmaking. And we're going to start off with a bunch of group prompts where we'll be making, maybe together, we might be making monoprints, and or we might be making them individually. But after the prompts will expand to support individual interests from the members of the workshop. So basically, we're opening up a space in the workshop to think about potential intersections of printmaking and performance and gesture. So oftentimes I think about the act of making it of a print because it's so physical as being kind of like a dance. But the prints might become characters or they might become costumes. There's really no end to what people could come up with to do with this opportunity. So depending on the interests of the group and the individuals within the group, there'll be an opportunity to stage a print shop activation, performance, or happening on student night. And that's completely up to the students. Participants will have the opportunity to include sound, text, or video, or any other elements they might want to do. So I'm just really excited. And also, it's so fun to teach collaboratively. So this, I wanted to share this with you. This is a monoprint that Sarah Stern made here in the print shop. So a monoprint is, of course, any print that's just one of a kind. And it can be any method of printmaking. But these are this is sort of a collage of some stills from her video animations. Okay, so I thought I would start by showing you some of my, when I show you my work now, a few of my monoprints, since I've been talking about monoprints. But this one is basically done with silkscreen, but it is a monoprint, a one-of-a-kind print. Oftentimes silkscreen is done in an edition, but it's not absolutely, that's not part of it. It's just, it can be done. So this is called A Dozen Reasons. And there are a dozen flowers in there, at least. This is a monotype. It's called Summer Morning. It's about 40, it's 30 by 44 inches. And it uses silkscreen and all kinds of stencils and a variety of printmaking techniques. This one is called Metamorphosis, and it has tons of silkscreen in it, but also other printmaking processes, lots of stencil work. So I kind of want my work to communicate something about the spirit that permeates the world. So I think of the whole earth as like a living organism. So plants, animals, and the landscape are all part of this living organism in my brain. So I think if like the imagery makes you think about the planet a little bit, like as a fragile place that shelters life and encourages life, that's really what the work is about for me. This one is called Picnic, same size, 30 by 40 inches. So these are created on the big press right here in the Work Center. I have my own studio at home, but my press isn't that large, so the big prints are made here. Again, lots of silkscreen. This one is called Ecological Story. Okay, so now, if any of you have been in that bathroom down the hall, you will recognize this. So I was invited to make some wallpaper for that bathroom. What a delight. So just, I created a kind of repeating pattern with silkscreen and then glued the paper all down on the wall. So for those of you who have never seen a silkscreen or don't know what it looks like, this is it. And my class is so wonderful. Everybody is so terrific, experimenting. So many of you have not printed before a silkscreen, and you're all so brave, and you're just diving in and got all these great ideas. It's just lovely. But anyhow, it works because there's a frame with fabric stretched across it, and then you fix some kind of stencil onto the frame, and then you push ink through the frame onto a surface below, which could be fabric or paper, with a squeegee. So, t-shirts. So I'm not an elitist at all about printmaking or art making. I think t-shirts are fabulous. But I like bugs. This was made by a high school student at PAM. Simple for my class. It's a simple hand-cut stencil done with Mylar. One color. Oops, back. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some of my silk screens that are just silk screens and also not monoprints, but done in editions. Small editions, I do like 4. For me, that's an edition. This one is called Porcubit, and I did a couple of different versions of it. So it's titled Porcubit because of that creature up on the upper left. I figure it's kind of like a rabbit porcupine creature. And then this is a slightly different version, which is hard to see the color changes in this because of the light in here, but just a slightly different version. This one is called Cloud Dog. So each color is another layer, and sometimes there are blends of color, which are called split fountains in fancy silkscreen language. But they're, basically it's a lot of layering and a lot of figuring out how to get everything in the right place. And my students are adjusting to that idea. This one is called Bucky's Bird. So I wanted to just share with you some of my inspirations besides the natural ones, the walks in nature, which is always constant, but this is a mosaic from a church in Ravenna, Italy. I just like the way they set up the composition and the sparkliness of it, but also the way the animals are kind of positioned all in there and interacting in a kind of weird but separate way. There's just a close-up of it. Oh, and this is an inspiration from nature. So this is the breakwater very near my house, but the colors here on the Cape are just like so exquisite. Like that green. You can't, that green just like only exists there. I can't mix that color. I want to, but I can't. So I want to show you a few paintings. Most of my paintings start out as still life, and I just set up little still lifes and paint them. These are pretty small paintings. I'm a small painter. My prints are bigger than my paintings, oddly enough. So last year, and I guess it was just before June, I got asked to, would I like to make a mural for Macmillan Wharf? And I thought, well, my paintings are so tiny, and I'm going to have to make something that's 7 feet tall and 20 feet long. And it was a bit intimidating, but I thought, well, I have all these little paintings. I'll just put them together and use them as a study. So I put these guys together, and this is the study for the mural. And it's not very big. It's so that's about 14 inches tall, actually, that painting. And then, whoop, go back. This is the working on the mural in my studio. So it was in pieces of aluminum panels, and I didn't have a studio wall 20 feet long, so I just kept moving them around to try to finish it. And there it is on the side of the building on McMillan Wharf, and it's up there now for maybe a couple more weeks. It's gonna come down, and I'm gonna have a 20-foot mural. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but that's okay. It was really a fun project. I loved making it big. Oh, so that first photograph was taken on a day when they put up cones so we could photograph it, but this is what it usually looks like with cars in front of it, yeah. It faces the parking lot, which is fine with me. I was just really happy to do it. Okay, so these are a couple, I'm gonna show you a few paintings. So this is called Room Temperature. So lots of layers, and I like to let things that were underneath that weren't working kind of show through a little bit. Like little secret worlds, like kind of what happens in nature when you're out there walking and you see through trees and you see all this other stuff happening. This one is called Last Chance. So also I like to combine landscape, you know, real earth with water, and not make any distinction about, you know, whether a fish is swimming in the woods or whatever. This is called Baby Blue. This is a little portrait of my very first pet creature, animal, that I was allowed to adopt as a child. This is called Arctic Woes. The polar bear is worried about the climate, as we all are. Here's another version of the polar bear. This is a lithograph. So this is what happens when a lithograph starts to fail. It fills in. It just goes dark. So I don't know what I did wrong, but I did something wrong, and it just got darker and darker. But I kind of like this print. So sometimes I think about how the accidental nature of printmaking, like you really can't predict what's going to happen no matter how many years you've been doing it. So I like that. I like that printmaking, like there's this reveal. First of all, except for silkscreen, your image reverses, which is a shocker. And then the other thing is that you really don't know how it's going to print. Like you're pulling that paper up off the press after it's gone through, and it's like, wow, a present. This is also a lithograph. Oh, so my students were asking me if I ever do anything three-dimensional, and I told them I really like to sew and that I find it really relaxing. So I often make creatures. But these are just for me. I don't really show them anywhere. And so I made this one for my dog Odo. That was for his 3rd birthday. And he loves it very much. And I know he looks very calm and quiet there, but this is how he usually looks. So I started this is so weird because this is a tiny little etching that's like 4 by 4 inches. But I kind of wanted to see what it looked like big. but I've started this whole series of little robot etchings. It's like sort of early robots, like robot toys from the 50s and 60s, and they're kind of fun to work on. Whoops, back. Oh, this is not back. Wait, it's going the wrong way. Oh. Okay, so this is the beginning of like one of those little etchings. So this is very tiny, but this is how they start, with just a line etching, and then I add the tone. And this is the still life that etching was started from, and also the still life that I started the demo for the class off with. Class will recognize all those creatures. So the work center is lucky. We have purchased a risograph machine, which is so exciting, a whole new printmaking tool. So a risograph machine looks like a little copy machine, but it's actually sort of an automated silkscreen machine. Well, I'm done. Okay, so this is the logo. We've named the press, and this is the logo for it. If you go into the risograph room, you will see that logo in there. And in the back, there are some stickers. And I'm just going to quickly go through this. So I also, in learning the risograph machine, I have created a bunch of little zines, which are back there on the table. So I won't go through all of these but maybe I'll just show you Strummer. So this is actually my daughter's cat. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Thank you.
Vicky Tomayko, thank you. Again, the workshop she's teaching with Sarah Stern is taking place from July 27th to August 1st. There's a couple of places left, so if you're at all interested, you will not regret it. It will blow your mind. Vicky's great, Sarah's great. Together, it's just sort of mind-blowing. Also, you can hear their band. You can hear their band at our November FAWC Friday event. So they're going to be activating our gallery at our first FAWC Friday event, first Friday in November. So mark your calendars. Yep. Look, gasps. More gasp. It's a night of gasps. I love gasps. Okay, so that's it. I would like to invite Asako back up, and we're going to do a little Q&A. Just a reminder, if you have questions, wait for Dustin to get to you with a microphone because we're live streaming this event and we want everybody at home to be able to hear your fabulous questions. So, who's got a question?
Hi, my
Hello.
name's Lisa. I'm in Asako's class, and hello. You started off your reading not by saying, I don't usually do this reading. You said, I never do this reading, and that made me want to know why.
I don't know why I don't read this one. I usually read other things. So the collection, so the piece is from a collection that's linked, and I typically read. Actually, I read the companion piece to this one, which has a completely different structure. Like this one is a woman in the 30s. Her world is kind of a domestic space, and so she's confined to this story space of this afternoon and the house. I typically read the other one, which is like it's the husband's story, and it spans geography and time, and he's a perpetrator, and so I kind of tend to read that type. But we were talking about objects, and everyone is writing all of these things, and I wanted to do something that's in conversation with the class. And so I decided to read this. I've also been thinking a lot about fear, and how this kind of fear places you in this small space, or makes you small in this way, and kind of like encroaches on the imagination. And I think you often hear this thing of like, well, but you have to guard your imagination. You need freedom there. This imaginative freedom is this space. And I mean, I understood this in a particular way, but I think the climate today, it really makes me think about the importance of that, because if you start to become small, in the imagination and trapped in that kind of fear, this claustrophobic space, they've won, because you're paralyzed, you can't do anything. And so I felt that kind of space is important. So I don't know, maybe all of these things kind of came together and I decided to read this one. But I had to shave off like a layer, so yeah, anyway, yeah.
Hi, Vicky. I have a couple of quick questions. Are you using acrylic in your paintings?
Oh, so the paintings are, they're both oil paint and acrylic, but not in the same paintings.
Gotcha.
But I didn't mention that.
And are they for sale?
Yes.
And one last question. You know how you said the color green is hard to get in silkscreen? Do you ever use acrylic paint mixed with silkscreen medium to get more color?
So, yes, I do know about silkscreen medium. Golden makes a silkscreen medium that you can mix with any acrylic paint, but they recommend their own, of course, and it works really well. So, yes, I mean, and Golden makes every color. I could probably get that green.
So you mentioned the Koi Wolf press and your new piece of equipment, which I realize now is in the farthest room, and it looks like a Xerox machine, and I thought it was. And I'm now intrigued because you've said that it sort of works like a silkscreen machine, but which of course raises the question of how digital technologies are impacting how mark making is made, and in a sense distancing artists from the act of making art. Will we soon have an oil painting machine? Well, we kind of do. I know those exist, but can you comment a little bit about your relationship to these things? Because I mean, I know that they're tools, but how do you see how they are going to change the practice of silk screening and other printmaking?
So the risograph machine is actually a very old machine that was invented in Japan, and it was supposed to be the color copier for everybody. But the thing about the risograph machine is there are some risograph machines that can print 2 colors at a time, but our machine prints only 1 color at a time. So the machine cuts a stencil, which is on a drum, and then the ink, you have to change the ink for each stencil in the machine. And it's like this big thing. It's like heavy. So it's kind of a mix of, so what happened was with the risograph machine is that it became obsolete for the purpose it was made. But artists started buying them up because they thought, wow, this makes a kind of image that you can't make any other way. It has a very distinct quality to it. It looks a little retro. It doesn't always print perfectly. It's kind of funky looking. And I enjoy that about it. I do like the option to be able to photograph work and then put it into this program called Spectralite, and then this program breaks it down into color separations, and all I have to do is change the color drum. It's kind of amazing. And it's a really nice way to make a lot of something that's not too precious, very, very fast, that you could kind of give away. It's so inexpensive to make. It's just this paper. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Do you how has it changed your practice of old style silk screening? Do you think it's had an impact on?
It works like a silk screen, but it doesn't look like a silk screen, right? I mean, the process is like a stencil on a drum. So the stencil on the drum is sort of like the stencil you fix on a screen, but the quality of the print is completely different. Yeah, I'll show you.
Thank you both so much for those incredible presentations. I'm shifting gears a bit. I wanted to ask a follow-up question about suspension and fear that I saw and heard in both of your works. And I'm really curious because, Vicky, you talked about the layering, and there's supposed to like kind of this pleasure in layering. But I also heard you talk about kind of the things that happen between the layering when things are suspended. And I know, although you were talking about objects, in the Q&A when you started talking about fear, I was better able to understand why I was so enthralled with the piece you read, because so many of the objects, instead of feeling like they were illuminated for me, I felt like they were suspended, right? Like they were held in suspension. And so I'm just curious if either or both of you would be willing or interested in talking a bit about the relationship between suspension and layering in your work, either as practice or process or in product. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm really interested in the fear part because I think as an artist of any kind, I don't know if this is true of writers, but I know very many visual artists who feel like every time they start a painting or a print or anything, there's like this imposter thing that happens to you. You feel like, I know nothing. And like, how am I going to start over every single time? That's how I feel. I'm starting brand new, and I don't know enough to begin.
I think for me, I mean, it's kind of true, you know. I think, well, okay, so each piece is really different. I think for this one, I often use description or motifs or objects in this case to anchor the layers. So layers meaning like thematic layers or characters, or all of these things are kind of like these sediments. And to pull through themes and things like this, like I usually use objects to kind of as a paperweight or anchor, you know, to pin it down and thread it through. And so that's kind of the work. But this particular piece, because it's about absence in this way, and how to kind of talk about that absence, it's kind of like a classic ghost story. So that's kind of like the frame that I was using to tell this particular story. And it's one of the most straightforward story that's in the book, and partially because of that sort of ghost story layer. And so I think the suspension might be actually coming from that, because that's the thing that kind of washes away, like the anchored things, because it is about absence and obscurity and her own obscure fears that are like projected onto these things,
I
was wondering, Vicky, you were talking about like with your like in the print shop and your printmaking practice that's very performative, and you get like into this like rhythm or dance. How does that like differ when you get into painting, especially doing the like large mural where you're really using your body, just like how your like, I don't know, experience with the process like changes?
Well, I always think about that aspect of like movement. Like if you think just in thinking about people who have painted in Provincetown, like for instance, Helen Frankenthaler, her paintings, they feel like they were made from motion. Like there's a like an energy in them that was made by movement. So that kind of all is sort of like in the back of my mind. Like printmaking and painting are very active physical things. Like I don't sit down a lot. That's why I love the sewing, partly, because I get to sit down. But I don't know if that answered your question. I feel like it's kind of like a dance. It's a little bit performative. Like I think about that, like moving from here to there, and what's it like to like spin that big wheel on that press? Like I love that wheel. And so many people, like I've had people come in there and say, wow, could I just like put my feet on the wheel and my hands on the top of the wheel and spin around with it? And I'm like, no. But it is kind of performative. It's like it suggests, whoa, maybe I could be a circus acrobat here with this press. Like,
Is it a two-part thing where do you conceptualize sitting down? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because I stand to write.
oh, you do?
I do a standing desk thing, but if I have to think really hard, I have to sit down. So for me, movement would be like, I mean, I'm always moving, but it's like tree pose, often, rather than like moving, like dancing around, or, I love this idea, but when you have to think or conceptualize, I don't know.
Okay, that is, yes.
Do you have to sit? Do you
I have a
sew?
chair.
Oh, yeah.
In my studio, I did purchase a very soft chair that I could sit in and like look.
Okay.
I think the looking is good.
Yeah, because I feel like the thinking in the body sometimes is I don't know, it needs to have its own space or something.
That's really good. Thank you.
Asako, you said that you're working on your next project, you're in the research phase, which was interesting to me because it sounds like it's separate than the writing phase. Can you talk about your research process?
Oh, goodness. I generally have a topic when I begin, but I do a lot of like academic stuff just to kind of understand the landscape of what I'm doing. And then I kind of see what else is out there, how creatively people have responded to it. And then I kind of look at all of that and I decide how I want to respond to it. So it's kind of like this, more of an academic-y type of approach. And then when you start, I mean, the creative process is what it is. It's a different kind of thing. But that's probably, the conceptualizing is probably the part that takes the longest because I'm constantly reading and, my class and I were just kind of discussing how, like, when do you know when to stop researching? Because it's interesting, it's endless, and you can do it forever and procrastinate, But eventually you have to put your first brick down, And so, it's kind of like the best part, but also the worst part, because you need to then generate, Yeah.
One more question?
Hello. Vicky, in your description of your artwork, you talked about different ways you express, and so this is a question to both of you. I've noticed that people who have more than one ways of expressing seem to have a really amazing sort of way of finding their creativity. I wondered, maybe for Vicky, how each of your different sort of expressions help the other, and Asako-san, if you also have more than one form of creative outlets that help you sort of inform the thing that you're most excited about.
I think for me, the teaching is a big part of this movement from one medium of print or painting to the next. Because I'm always, as soon as I start teaching, trying to teach someone something, I get really excited about it. Like I learn new things. You know, like teaching painting, I'm really into teaching reflected light and color. And like, I think, oh, now I have to do it, you know? And it's just, it's so exciting to be, you know, engaged in both of those ways, learning and teaching at the same time. And I think, you know, if you're not learning something as a teacher, then you're not a very good teacher.
I knit, for example. I have to do something tactile because when you're writing, you're just kind of in here. I mean, I have papers everywhere, but it's really kind of in here, and it's whatever I can do that's more physical and out, you know, movement. So I feel like that's always, like things like that, like crafty things. I'm always doing crafty things. Sometimes I would cook, that kind of thing, you know, but something very physical.
Right. We have another big round of applause for Asako Serizawa, Vicky Tomayko. Woo! Remember, Asako will be signing books at the back, and books will be for sale, and as well as Vicky's objects and zines and stickers. It's all back there. It's all worth a look. Take a look at the gallery if you haven't yet. It's a really great night. And if you haven't signed up for student night, it's not too late. People are starting to sign up, which I'm really happy about. Anyway, join us tomorrow night for poet Gabrielle Cavacoresi and artist Megan Hinton for tomorrow night. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.